I'd like to call this meeting of the Board of Education for the School District of Fairview to order for Monday, March 12th, 2012 with a roll call. Mr. Borkenhagen. Here. Mr. Cummings.
Here.
Mr. McNevin.
Here.
Mr. Meering.
Here.
Mr. Mortimer.
Here.
Mr. Debro.
Here.
And Bodak here. Continue with the pledge. The flag's behind the counter.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes of the February 27th meeting.
I will so move.
I'll second it.
Motion by Cummings, seconded by Meering. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Brings us to the agenda item correspondence. I have none. Any other board members with correspondence?
I have some, but I'll give it during the legislative update.
I do, Kevin. I did had some correspondence from David Stats concerning the middle school project up there. And after some discussion, I assured him that we had looked at all possibilities that we had received, and including some that he directed us to review.
Okay. Any other board correspondence? Crystal is tending to a personal concern tonight, so she's not with us. Jane, do you have any administrative correspondence? She's not here. Hearing none, brings us to the portion of the agenda entitled Public Viewpoints. Do we have anyone here for public viewpoints tonight? Do we have anyone here for public viewpoints?
Can you hear me all?
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, my name's Scott Frostman. I'm here just representing myself. I wanted to speak to a couple of the matters that I think will likely be brought before the legislative committee in response to articles that were recently in the paper. The first thing was regarding the Save Our Schools initiative that was sponsored by Representative Clark and Representative Pope Roberts. I'm just going to quickly brush on that I think that that's without any merit, because it's a rehash of the proposal that was brought before, and it's basically just asking that we spend another $350 million, but there's no information in there on how they actually plan to come up with $350 million. There's not $350 million just laying around. So I don't think that that's with a lot of merit. I specifically want to speak to the other item that was talked about with regard to the special needs kids and their scholarships to make their choice on what type of environment they want to do, what environment they want to be involved in. I attended the Assembly's Education Committee's public hearing on Assembly Bill 110 back in May of 2011. And it was interesting to hear the levels of correspondence, hear the kind of the back and forth. There were a number of the experts that talked about least restrictive environment, and I couldn't agree more that it is incumbent that we find the most appropriate environment, that we do whatever we can within the limitations of those kids to find that least restrictive environment for those children.
Well, that's the law. That's the law,
right?
Correct? So it doesn't matter if it's incumbent
right.
or not.
So yeah, I think that's a good idea. Well, one of the things that was interesting that Representative Hintz said during that meeting was he talked about the difference where it was in other locations where they'd used that. The only substantive difference between what the kids were, the only substantive difference was in greater parental satisfaction and greater parental involvement. And my thought of that was, well, isn't that the point? You know, we also heard from a number of very impassioned parents of special needs students who have had to deal with whatever that cognitive disability or whatever that child's special arrangements have been since birth, since before birth in many cases. They deal with that 24/7. Who are we, who are the experts to say that they have better judgment than those parents in choosing the most appropriate environment for that child? You know, you can say that this is the environment that you feel is the most appropriate, but I think it is ultimately that parent's decision about what type of environment is going to be most appropriate for that child. So I talked to Senator Olson's office this morning. Assembly Bill 110 passed the Assembly with bipartisan support. I don't think that Senate Bill 486, the Senate companion of this, is going to make it through in time to be looked at this, because it's still going through. It hasn't had an executive committee hearing yet. So I don't know if it's going to make it through. But I asked Senator Olson to be in support of this, because I believe that the parents have the ultimate authority and the parents have the ultimate responsibility to do what's best for their child. Thanks, guys.
Do we have any other public viewpoints? Any other public viewpoints? Any other public viewpoints? Hearing none, I'd like to move on to the report section of the agenda. First up is the budget update, and the Chair of Finance, Mr. McNevin.
A couple of things happened in finance just moments ago. The first thing is we do have a budget transfer that came before the committee that I need to pass through the board here. What this is, it's a housekeeping issue with the curriculum expenditures that were authorized in the 2011 budget. All the money was put into curriculum general supplies because we weren't exactly sure how that money was going to get allocated within which building and within which department. Lori has gone back and said, okay, here's the expenditures of those dollars. It's $119,000, but what it does is it takes it out of the general supply bucket and allocates it accordingly across the Jack Young Middle School literacy and science equipment, as well as the high school biology, physics, social studies equipment. This is a purchase of a piece of technology as well as equipment, and the committee met to approve the transfer. And after I'm done with my report, we'll come back through and move to approve after everybody's got a chance to review that. Second thing that came through the committee discussion tonight was taking a look at 2011 operating budget and where we stand. And in that budget, are there opportunities to get a few more things done this calendar year, or this fiscal year, I should say. And there is a chance to address some needs. The committee was looking at, Jim was recommending kind of a three-way split. We take a third of those resources that are remaining and allocate them to the middle school wall project, as far as identifying purchase of materials such as brick and steel, and getting that project initiated with a third of the dollars. Another third of the dollars are just pecking away at the capital project list that always seem to be delayed each and every year. I'm going to pass this down. That's about $250,000 worth of needs that can be done in short order. You're looking at things like carpeting, crack filling, steam traps. I'm doing this for the camera and everybody watching at home. Primex clocks in buildings, boiler burners at the high school, air duct replacement valves, something that I didn't understand, and a few miscellaneous items. But those are things that had come out of the 5-year plan that have been ignored. None of them are really sexy in nature or worthy of any headlines, but they're all things that need to be done. And then the other area we looked at and that we continue to look at is technology needs. Matt's took a look at the resources. This was put in all your mailboxes. And what this is accomplishing is getting about 203 computers updated, 6-year-old technology, mostly high school and middle school, looking to replace older computers with MacBooks and Chromebooks, and bringing a lot of the labs up to speed. That is in your book or in your board box, or has been emailed to you also.
It was emailed, yeah.
And then Patrick's list is going to be emailed out to everybody so that you'll have a copy of it. We'll also put it in the box so that everybody's got a copy. But the committee discussed the 2011 budget and wrapping it up and where we stand. And we took a look at the 3 areas of needs and said, okay, what can we allocate to the middle school wall? About a third. What can we allocate to technology to keep it current? About a third. And then finally, the never-ending list of repairs and maintenance that need to be done. We took a look at keeping up with some of those. We're not recommending anything at this time because we didn't think that everybody had a chance to take a look at the detail and digest the numbers. But right now the committee discussed the third option, and we're going to be meeting on it before the next board meeting and coming forth with a recommendation. If you've got some questions regarding either of those lists, or how the third would be spent at the middle school. You can ask Jim about the middle school, you can ask Patrick about that capital project list, and certainly Matt's available to answer any questions you have about the technology.
So we're not voting on this
No,
tonight,
we're not.
but we're gonna maybe, so if we have some questions, we can obviously transpose those and send them out.
Right, we don't like taking it right out of committee and 4 minutes later trying to get everybody to approve it.
Sure.
We want everybody to review it, put in their 2 cents and digest it, and then we'll bring it back at the next board meeting. That'll be good.
And get your questions out of the way ahead of time and stuff, and
Yep.
then we'll discuss it then.
Yeah, but, we started to go through the details, and we'll have an opportunity to do that at the next meeting if you've got any more questions. But we do need the full board to authorize the transfer, correct, Jim?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you restate the motion on the transfer? Board?
Yeah, I'd like to move that we authorize the fund balance transfer from miscellaneous supplies and curriculum to each of the detailed expenditures within
I will second it.
the curriculum expenses.
Motion by McNevin, seconded by Cummings. Any discussion?
On these capital projects to be done by June, I would assume they better get those out for bids pretty soon then, right?
Yeah. Yeah, if the board approves them, and that's if the board approves.
That was a question that we asked right near the end of the meeting to both Patrick and Matt, that if the board approves, this program going forward, can you in fact, following the next board meeting, get this stuff in place and done by June 30th? And they felt very comfortable that they could.
Are these copies in our mailbox? Not as Friday, were they?
Patrick's
No,
not. Matt's should have been.
They will be.
I would hope. But again, Mr. Mortimer, that's for the next board meeting action. So we're clear on what we're acting on. Any other questions on that motion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Brings us to the legislative update. Mr. Meering.
Okay, I have a few items here, just as an update. WISNet is currently, we have it, it's approved through the July 1st of 2013. There are 2 bills out there, Senate Bill 375 and Assembly Bill 473, which are now currently, the lack of a better term, languishing in committee. So hopefully that they will push them out. If they don't come out this week, then we have to hopefully push on it for next year to get a continuing extension of that program, which will obviously support a lot of these 21st century needs that we have in our school district. The other thing is the voucher loophole bill. Apparently this will finally come to a vote on the Assembly floor tomorrow. We got to cross our fingers, but it's looking positive, and hopefully it'll pass so that they can close that loophole, and then we can have a more transparent process moving forward. The special education voucher bill, it is my understanding, and I'm not, maybe Scott, maybe you have something different, but I think it's being voted on the Assembly tomorrow.
Well, I know there was a vote taken like yesterday, but I think that was.
Yesterday is Sunday.
I mean, like last week, I think there was a vote taken on it, but I think that there was still a process that it had to go through.
Okay, I think the process is that tomorrow it will be at the Assembly, Assembly Bill 110, I think is the correct number. And so it will be on the Assembly floor tomorrow. And you said it passed. I said, oh my goodness, I did again. But I'm pretty sure it is tomorrow that it'll be voted on. It is my current understanding, at least, that Senator Luther Olson, every indication is that he is not in favor of it. I don't remember the exact time frame, but when it went up the last time, I did have a discussion with him, and he saw some serious issues with the federal law and our laws in how that thing would be moving forward.
Recent things, I haven't talked to him personally, but recent things that I have seen in at least the newspaper shows that Senator Olson is still very, very concerned about this legislation moving forward. I have been in correspondence with Representative Brooks. He currently is saying that he's in favor of it. But one of the things that I sent to him today, there are many, many groups that are speaking against this. The Wisconsin Association of School Boards, the list goes on and on. The DPI, the school. The school administration people. Miles Turner said this is probably some of the worst legislation he has ever seen. But you know, I want to read a little bit from one group, and this is a group that's known as Disability Rights of Wisconsin. They're probably the largest disability rights group in our state. They advocate for the disabled, the special needs students of the state. And so I want to go through at least some of the things that they discussed in their testimony against this bill. And again, they are always looking out for the best interest of the students. First thing is they talked about the funding mechanism. He said it's highly problematic. Since Wisconsin does not fully fund special education students on a per pupil basis, this bill does exactly that, and would withdraw the objection if there was a separate funding for this vouchers that did not punish, and they use the word punish, the 95% or greater students with special needs who remain in the public school. They said since there is no tuition cap, students with moderate to severe needs will not receive a voucher which pays for the cost of their education. Secondly, they say that the voucher program will likely cream off the less disabled students. This will result in a perverse effect of the vouchers serving to subsidize families who can afford to send their children to private schools already. And he goes on to finish with that particular section on the financing. We cannot imagine the rationale for subsidizing moderate and upper income families who wish to send their children to private school through these vouchers. The second point that they brought about is the cap of the 5% children is a statewide cap, but there is no district-wide cap. This could result in some districts losing far more than 5% of their special education students, increasing the problem of segregating high-need students in the public schools as addressed above. In addition, the bill as drafted allows the 5% to be cumulative each year, thereby allowing an ever-growing number of children to obtain these vouchers each year. The money that's given to this is the first draw of the state money. So if this were to go through and we were to have students who would go through on this program, it would have a negative effect not only on the school districts but on the property taxpayers under the current school funding formula. So this is going to have a negative impact for not just special needs students but the school district and, I'm sorry, I'm going on, and for the school district too. Then he goes into reference to implementing the child's most recent IEP. The way they have that, the IEP will follow the child, but they have nothing in the law that says that this IEP has to be updated. In other words, whatever happens to child IEP is not implemented, it's not educated in the least restrictive environments or expelled. So they talk about this being modeled after Ohio's legislation. This is one of the programs which is doing this currently. Ohio's legislation requires that private schools which accept these vouchers must have special education related services. And these will be, and they want to be capable of implementing the child's IEP. If the private school has no trained staff capable of doing so, how can they be capable of implementing the IEP? And then they go on to finally say the legislature regularly expressed concerns about the rising number of children in special education with their attendant higher costs. This bill actually locks children into a disability status for up to 16 years. So once they get into the system of the private school, they have no impetus to update their IEP or to say, you know what, this child is moving along, so maybe we need less services, so maybe we don't need to evaluate this child as a special needs student. That's the goal of what we do in our schools, is to help the student to move along. So there's no provision for reevaluating that child in the bill. And the result will have to be continue to grow the number of children with disabilities in Wisconsin and expand the funding necessary to educate this continually and growing population. This is from Disability Rights of Wisconsin. The last thing I want to talk about is the Save Our Schools program, and which has already been mentioned once this evening. You know, it might be labeled as a Democratic bill. All I want is a discussion on reform, school funding reform. It doesn't seem to be that as a discussion that we want to have. All we want to talk about is sending public education monies to what is currently unaccountable voucher and, in this case, special needs vouchers. And so we need to have that discussion. Not that we're going to continually send our money in a different direction versus the education of our public education students in our state. And so with that, I don't know if anybody else has any comments.
I have a question.
Yes.
To my knowledge, there is not a similar bill in the Senate, nor is there a bill pending in the Senate. On the special education vouchers? There is
a Senate bill, I think it's 486, on the special education vouchers. What is probably going to happen, and again, I gotta hope that they won't pass it tomorrow in the Assembly, but because there are senators out there, I'm not going to speak for all of them, but at least for Senator Olson at this point, who is stating that he is very much against this, that and there may be others, and I've heard that there are other concerns from at least other Republicans, and certainly I believe they don't. It's when I hear bipartisan, I'm trying to find the Democrat who did vote for this. I'm concerned. I'm curious with who that was, because I did not hear about any Democrat who did vote for it, but maybe there is one or two. But I know at least on the Senate side, there probably are not enough votes, so it'll probably pass the Assembly, and my guess it'll stop there because they don't have enough votes in the Senate.
Well, my understanding is that it's not scheduled for a vote in the Senate.
No.
My information is incorrect.
I don't think it is, but if they feel they have enough votes, then I would guess that they would schedule one.
Okay.
But right now, I think you're correct. There is not a scheduled vote.
Okay, thank you for the update. Any other board members with comments before we move on?
I just want to support Doug in his recommendation that the board have a conversation about the philosophy of voucher schools and the way it's being implemented in the legislature, so that we all understand what is being presented in as clear and crisp a manner, and where those monies will come from to support those vouchers, and whether those vouchers require the same kind of certification and oversight that we as a school board require currently.
Okay, I'm sure we will be discussing it further pending this week's session.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you, Doug. Hearing
You're
nothing
welcome.
else? Is there anything else? Sorry, I didn't mean to jump on anybody. If there's nothing else on the legislative update, I'd like to move to the Buildings, Grounds, and Transportation Committee report. Mr. Cummings asked me to report out from that meeting, which was last Monday, the 5th. We had a representative from the EPA for the committee, along with, that was Kathy Calder from the EPA and Michael Schmuller from the DNR. They went through the current district chemical waste management practices. Mr. Acker was there, Mr. Long was in attendance. We reviewed what our current policies are. They had some input on ways that we could do better. We are going to try to implement those suggestions. We had our representative from, is it EMC, which is our waste management consultant.
Our environmental services.
Environmental services consultant. The consensus from the committee was that there was a request to formulate our policy moving forward and share that with the regional spill coordinator for Sauk County, so that will be forthcoming. We also discussed facility emergency protocol. That was in reference to the gas leak here at the high school. Again, Mr. Acker went through the procedures that happened that day. There was a discussion forthcoming in regards to the emergency response team that will be having a meeting in April.
April 11th.
April 11th.
Wednesday, the 11th.
And it was decided that it would be beneficial to have a representative from Alliant be invited to that meeting to see if there's anything that they can add to the system that we have now so that we can prevent a similar occurrence from happening and have protocol that will accommodate it. The fire chief, Mr. Steve, was also in attendance and shared his information from that day. We talked about the Green Schools program, which is something that is an environmental educational program that the DNR is involved with, and we're going to look and see if there's anything that we can glean from that moving forward throughout the district, whether it be solar panels or recycling or waste management. There were a number of things that are possible there, and we'll look into that. That was pretty much the extent of the committee's meeting.
Kevin, just an update on that. The following Wednesday, both Patrick and Jim Jazwikowski that were at the meeting attended a session in Madison on handling hazardous waste and proper storage procedures. And after consulting with the folks in the chemistry labs that are using the Bunsen burners, we've adjusted the time clock on the gas system so that it starts later and goes off earlier in the evening. It wasn't what we had hoped for, so we'll continue to work with them. We'd like to bump it another hour closer to when school starts and another hour closer till after school lets out.
Thank you. Brings us to the portion of the agenda entitled Personnel Recommendations. We have before us tonight no resignations. We don't have any certified staff retirements, but there are a couple of long-standing district employees out of the maintenance department that are going to be retiring at the end of May, 1st of June. I would like to just recognize them. We have Jack Burton, who's been a carpenter for the district for 32.5 years. He will be retiring at the end of May. And Gene Heim, who's been a painter for the district as of late. He's been here for 26 years. I do have a couple of letters that I would like to have the board authorize me to sign on behalf of the district for their many years of service, and also indicate that the position of the painter is going to be
Plumber, HVAC, general maintenance.
so it's going to be consolidated.
Yes.
And we will be posting for a carpenter, I assume, in the near future, but again, that's a non-certified staff and doesn't require board approval. But I would like to thank Jack and Jean for their many years of service, and they will be surely missed in the maintenance department moving forward, and hopefully they will have plenty of time to enjoy their retirement. If that's all right with the board, I will sign those. Doesn't really require a formal action. I think it would be a nice gesture for their almost 60 years combined service.
Wow.
That'd be great.
I don't have any new hires to act upon tonight. Don't have any postings other than the non-certified that was mentioned, which again doesn't require board approval. Don't have any approval of long-term substitute positions. So that brings us out of the personnel recommendation section of the agenda to the working session, which is very short as well. And there is a request for approval of an out-of-state field trip. Kim Kershka and the French students, 3, 4, and 5, are going to go to Chicago.
Move to
Would
approve.
like to go to Chicago on the 23rd of April of this year. We have a motion to approve by Mr. McNevin. Is there a
I'll second it.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the request for the out-of-state field trip for the French students signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Brings us to the portion for consideration of adjournment, which I would entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Cummings, second by Mortimer. Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.